have another edition of our Crease Talk series here. So today we have with us Jason Labarbera. He is the current goalie coach for the Calgary Hitmen, was also the goalie coach for the Canadian World Junior team, and a member of the Top Prospects Goaltending group here in Calgary. So thanks a lot for joining us here today. Jason, I'll let you say hi to the group.
Hey guys, how's it going? Hope everyone's doing well. Glad to be here and talk goalie shop with you guys.
That's awesome. So, and Lanny, of course, is here too. Lanny's
yeah. How's it going, goalies? We're back.
We're back at it. So, we're going to talk about a lot of things here about Jason's career. We're looking at a 16-year pro here in the NHL, most notably probably LA and Arizona. Some time in the American Hockey League, a third-round pick of the New York Rangers. So just a wealth of experience, Jason, on your behalf. And anytime you get to pick the brain of a guy that's been able to achieve that high level of hockey, it's pretty cool. So first things first, Jason, what does quarantine life look like for you here without hockey?
Yeah, it's been pretty quiet. It's actually been good for me, just in the sense of it was a busy year with obviously with the Hitman and the schedule, and then the World Juniors and being gone for a whole month for that. So it's kind of been nice to be home with my kids who are 11 and 9. Getting to be around them more and help them with their school and do those sorts of things. So in that aspect, it's been good. Obviously, we all want to be on the ice and at the rinks and applying our craft and getting better and working hard and doing what we love to do. So that part's been tough, obviously, but it also has been nice to be home.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, a lot of time, away at the rink when you're a professional too, but you're also, full time with the Hitmen. So that's a lot of hours there as well. Let's go way, way, way back and how you started playing goal. Like what got you into this crazy position of goaltending?
You know what? I was always fascinated by it. Like I think I played out as a player once when I was like 5, and that was it. After that, I was like I was always the goalie. Like there was no debating it that I wanted to be a goalie. It was from back then. It was Tyke. It's Timbits now, but we had goalies back then, and I was always the only goalie in Tyke. I was the only goalie in Novice. Adam all the way through. So I was lucky in that sense that there was nobody else. I got to play all the time. I got to play quite a bit. I see, like any goalie, we like the equipment. It's just such an interesting, fascinating thing for us to look at and see. And I was lucky obviously to play for as long as I did, and even more lucky now to be able to step onto this side of things and be able to coach.
Yeah, absolutely. So, me and you played against each other back in the Western Hockey League days. You were a member of the Portland Winterhawks, and I was with the Kelowna Rockets. And then, you went on and drafted by the New York Rangers and were into their system. What did you find was the toughest adjustment going from, WHL goalie, you're playing almost every night back then, and you're the number one guy, and all of a sudden you're into pro. What was the toughest thing for you to make that transition?
There's a few things, obviously. Like you go from, like you said, playing all the time in junior to guys your age, guys that are younger than you, to going to play pro, and now you're not playing every game, and now you're playing with and against guys that are anywhere from 20 to 30, 35 years old back then, guys from all over the world. You're not just playing against guys from out west. Now you're playing against everybody from the world. Things like that, the grind of a schedule, a pro schedule on a daily basis. You're practicing at the rink every day. Now you're living on your own, learning how to take care of yourself, how to feed yourself properly, go to bed properly, on time, those sort of things. Like you really have to grow up as a pro. When you're playing junior, you're out of billets, and there's always someone there kind of taking care of you, there to do your laundry, there to make you food. You have to learn those things, all those life skills that you need to learn now. In your teen years are vitally important to help you play pro hockey. Hang on, I gotta go inside because it's starting to rain on me.
You're out in the west there, so you get the rain first, and then
Yeah, we do.
It'll start coming our way towards the east here.
You're good. Keep going.
You ready? You can still hear me?
Yep.
Beautiful. So obviously 16 years pro, lots of different stops along the way, lots of different teammates. How about some early influences in your pro career, whether it's, goalies you played with or an influential goalie coach? How about some that just popped into your head right off the bat?
Well, my first year pro was in the Rangers organization, and Mike Richter and Kirk McLean were the two guys that were playing for the Rangers at the time. So to go to camp and kind of be a part of that and be around those guys was super cool. I mean, especially for me, I was from BC. I grew up in BC. I was a big Vancouver Canucks fan, and Kirk McLean was always my favorite goalie, and having posters of him on the wall. So when you're 20 years old and you go to training camp and your childhood favorite goalie is there, and he takes you out for lunch, little things like that that are super important, super cool, help you kind of feel comfortable. Mike Richter was the same way. Like, he'd pull me aside and chat with me and just made me feel comfortable, made me feel welcome. It's never easy when you're 20 and you walk into an NHL dressing room trying to sort through things, and you've got all these big names, especially back then, like Messier and Lindros and Yager and Kovalev, like Brian Leach. They had a lot of big names back then, and you look around the dressing room and it's a little overwhelming. But those guys were super awesome to me. Like I said, made me feel comfortable, kind of made me just get to be myself instead of being overwhelmed by the situation. So those two guys, and then just coaching wise early on, the one lockout year in 2004, Benoit Allaire was in Hartford. The Rangers just hired him from Phoenix, and then the lockout happened. So it was myself and Steve Alquette in Hartford, and Benoit Allaire was really the first time I learned how to really play like new age sort of goaltending. Like, if you kids watch anything old school with, like, say, me and Swanee, there was a lot of pad stacks and poke checks and jumping around and crossover diving. Like, it was old school street hockey style back then. And that's how you played for the first little while as a pro, until this new sort of teaching and the new sort of technique kind of came in. And I first learned that really at 24 with Benoit Allaire, and helped change my game big time.
Yeah, I'm sure that would have been a tough adjustment too, and just, you're used to playing a certain way, and then all of a sudden, you got to learn all these new things that probably the younger guys are all doing coming up, but it would be brand new for you. So that's pretty interesting, and I'm sure that would have been a tough transition. If you look at all the goalies that you had the opportunity to play with, was there something that sort of tied it all together, like a commonality between them, whether it's either characteristic off the ice, or was there something that made you think, okay, this is what an NHL goalie is?
I think just their attention to the details, their process on a daily basis, how they prepared, how they came to the rink. They didn't just show up to the rink for practice and went through the motions and just practice to practice. They practiced with a purpose. They were there every day to improve and get better. When you turn pro, or you turn or if even going to the Western Hockey League, like, you're on the ice every day. It's a grind. There's going to be days where, yeah, you know what, you're not feeling your best, and you're not, and you are tired, and to grind through those practices, because that's where we get better, right? Watching, guys like, Roberto Luongo or Henrik Lundqvist and stuff in practice. Those guys, even on a day where where they're not feeling great, they'll find ways to get better. And that sort of mindset really resonated, and that's what, really helped me be able to play as long as I did. Because then, when your habits in practice and that are good, you go into a game, and now you get to go play and have fun. You've already put in the work. Now you get to go do the thing that you love doing the best, and that's playing hockey. So watching those guys again on a daily basis, like I said, just how they came to the rink, how they warmed up. They didn't just show up and practice. They showed up. They got there early. They warmed up off the ice properly. They warmed up on the ice properly. They took care of their bodies. They took care of themselves off the ice. they ate properly, they cooled down after practices and games. Like, they took care of themselves. They were pros, and to be around those sorts of people, like, you learn, if you want to stick around and you want to have a long career, those are super important lessons to learn.
Lanny, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, Barbs, I read a cool thing back in the day. I'm not sure if this is still true, that you used to you used to go through a pretty extensive workout before games. Was that the case?
Yeah, I wanted to be warmed up before the warm up. Like, I didn't want to go into a warm up, say, for a game, and try and get warmed up, because by the time I was warmed up for in the warm up for the game, the warm up was over. I wanted to feel good after the warm up. So in order for me to be ready to go for warm up, I warmed up off the ice, pretty hard. Like, I would have a pretty good sweat going, and I always battled that as far as whether I was doing too much or if I should pull back. But it always just made me feel like, once that first shot was coming at me in warm up, I was physically dialed in. Like, I was feeling good and ready to go. Like I said, I didn't want to be like 10 minutes into warm up and be like, now I'm starting to feel good.
Yeah, totally. So we got some kids coming in here with some questions for you, Barbs. First, we got a compliment. One kid loves the purple pads with the LA.
I had some good collars back then.
Yeah, he's a purple pad fan here. So we got a question from Zach. Out of the 8 NHL teams that you played for, which did you like to play for the most?
Well, I was in Phoenix probably the longest, and we had a really good group of guys, and we really probably overachieved there. We were never expected to win, but we always had good guys that really knew their roles, and guys that kind of bought into the group. We had some good teams, and we had a lot of success there. I think just for emotionally, Vancouver for me was just in the sense, like I said earlier, I was a Canucks fan growing up, and getting to go to the team that you watched growing up, your hometown, meant a lot, especially where I was in my career at that time. I was struggling in LA, kind of unsure of where I kind of fit in the league. And getting traded to Vancouver really kind of rejuvenated me and really, made me excited to get back to the rink again and be a part of obviously an awesome organization in Vancouver.
Oh, that's awesome. We got a question here. I guess we can split off on it too. It's a pretty good question. Who was the best player that you played with when you were in LA? So maybe let's extend that to the best player that you played with. And then what about the best player you would have faced in your career there, Bart?
When I was in LA? Wow. Well, I mean, there was a handful of guys like Kopitar and Doughty were young guys when I was there. You knew those guys were going to be studs, obviously. They were like Doughty at 18. He played like he was 28. He had just the poise he had and just how he played at 18 was obviously impressive. I mean, he's one of the best defensemen of this era. The same with Kopitar, is the same thing. You just knew that this guy was going to be an all-star caliber player. And, there was a lot of guys sort of on the back end, like at the end of my career, at the start of my career in LA, when I first got there, there was a lot of guys sort of at the back ends of their career, guys like Luke Robitaille and Jeremy Roenick. Roenick's in the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame, and I think Luke is in the NHL Hall of Fame, if I'm not mistaken. But those two guys were guys that I watched growing up as kids, and they were sort of at the end of their careers then, but still to be around those guys was pretty cool.
What about your favorite brand of gear? We got a question from Bo. What's your favorite brand of gear? Maybe when you played, and then maybe now, like the goalies you work with in Calgary or even the World Juniors. What's your favorite? Let's go with both.
Well, now I like the CCM stuff personally. I just I wore it at the end of my playing career, and it's still obviously around. And I mean, I don't know how it's working now with Lefebvre being gone from there, but I always like their gear, and I like their guys wearing it. My favorite gear, and Swanee had them too, was the old Heaton stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
The Heaton, like, it was awesome because back then we all had to we had to wear Louisville for a while, and then we got to decide we got to pick our own gear. And Heaton, which a lot of kids now probably don't know what that is, but Heaton was like a big big selling point back then. And to get a set of heating pads, at least for me in junior, was a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, that was actually my first set of gear. So I
Oh no way.
joined the heating club with you guys, you old farts. Okay, we got a couple quick ones, a few redundant ones. I know we touched on this earlier, Barbs, but just run them through how many years you played in the NHL, and then why you decided to become a goalie, just for the goalies that might have missed that at the start really quick.
I think 11 years in the NHL and then 16 as a pro. So 16 years is playing the American League in the NHL, and then, become a goalie just like everybody, right? You're intrigued by the position, the gear, all those sorts of things. It's such a unique thing to watch and see. And I don't know. I always gravitated towards it, and it was always something I wanted to do.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, Swanee, I'll turn it back to you. Let the questions keep coming in here.
Yeah, perfect. I think we'll transition more to what's going on current day here with you, Barb. So your role with the Hitmen, we'll touch on that, and then we'll get into some World Junior stuff, because I'm sure that's a staple around Christmas time in every Canadian hockey household. So I'm sure the kids are very interested, as am I, on hearing some more about more stuff on that. So your role with the Hitmen, you've been there for a number of years now. I think what we want to look at is sort of what is a day-to-day look like for you with your goalies there. You have Jack McNaughton, who's a Calgary kid, and Braden Peters, who's a Lethbridge kid, so two Alberta kids. What does a day look like with them?
Yeah, so it's similar, right? It's a little different schedule-wise in the sense that Braden's still, and you would know this, like Braden's still in high school, so you don't get as much early time before practice with him as far as, doing video and all that sort of stuff, doing off ice, workouts, warm-ups, ball stuff, those sort of things. But once the guys get there, usually, we usually get about 20 minutes to work with the goalies. So, I usually have 2 or 3 drills sort of planned out with them. Kind of go, you find your shooters that you want to have shooting in the drills that you have. You sit down with the goalies, you kind of go over the drills, kind of explain to them why you're doing it, the purpose of it, what we're trying to accomplish for that day. Get the shooters involved in it too, because it's obviously, like, you guys know, it's super important that the shooters are doing what they're supposed to be doing to make the drill work and make the goalies better. So you do that, and then, there's lots of video. It depends on what happens on the weekends. We'll sit and watch the clips, individually with each guy. Maybe there's something you want to touch on, or something that, maybe that you want to work on during the week. Maybe they played Saturday and, maybe they gave up a couple goals that, maybe, power play goals or screen goals or deflection goals, little things like that, that maybe you can incorporate into your practices during the week. So you're constantly looking to find ways to improve and looking to find ways to make the guys better. And they're both awesome guys to work with. They're both hardworking guys, and it's been nice in the sense that we've had a lot of guys come through Calgary in my 4 years. So to have a little bit of stability, this is Jack for the last 2 years, and Braden, for the first time this year, and both guys are expected to be back next year. So it's nice to have a little bit of continuity now.
Or can you touch on that a little bit, just the video stuff? Like, there's so much video access now, especially for younger kids, right? Almost everyone's got the iPad now during lessons, and there's the GoPros for the game review stuff. What do you think the importance of is? Because I'm sure at the start of your career, there was almost probably no video, eh? And then you probably saw it come into a goaltending perspective, and now you're using it almost every day. As a young goalie, it's important.
Yeah, there was no such thing as video back then. Like, it was way too hard for the coaches to VHS tape it and cut it and do all that. So it's a lot easier now. And sometimes it can be overkill. Sometimes, I like to sit and just watch the chances against with our guys. And a lot of times they'll let them kind of run it. They need to know what they're doing, what's important to their game, the strengths of their game, the things that they see. It's easy for me as a coach to sit there and say, well, you need to do this, you need to do that, but they need to know too themselves, I think. And I think it's important for them sometimes to just sit there and watch it and learn and educate themselves and really understand their own game. because that's important. Really important to know your game. What, like I said, the strengths of your game, what makes your game, when you're playing your best, what are the things that make you play your best in your game? You know, technically, mentally, all those sorts of things. So you're constantly, you know, again, for us in junior, it's a long season, and video can be redundant, just in the sense of like you're watching a lot of the games and you're having a lot of conversations. But sometimes, again, like I said, it's good for those guys to kind of sit there, and sometimes even as a group, we'll watch it together and just kind of let them talk. Like I said, it's important for them to know what they're doing.
That's awesome. I think we'll go into some World Junior territory here, Barb. So let's go right back to the start. Were you involved in the selection process right from the beginning with the goaltenders in Hockey Canada?
Yeah, so Hockey Canada has a head scout, right? And so they've got scouts all over, and they kind of put their lists together, and then you kind of work off that list. So you know, the process of the World Juniors is, you know, usually starts, you know, in June with the goalie camp. Hang on, now it's all windy in here. Sorry. It starts with the goalie camp in June, usually, and this year is a little bit different now we have a virtual goalie camp. You know, and then it goes into the summer showcase that we had, and it was in Plymouth last year. It was probably supposed to be somewhere in Canada this year in August. And you have 4 guys there, and then you just watch guys at the start of their seasons. And again, there's the scouts are out watching. They send me tons of video. Like I watch everything on video of all the guys. There's a lot of analytics that kind of go into the decisions of who's doing what. And you're trying to find guys that are trending and playing their best hockey at the right time. And like Joel Hofer and Nico Dawes were the 2 goalies that we had in the tournament, and those guys weren't even on the radar in June. They weren't on the radar in July. They weren't on the radar in August. Neither of them had been through the Hockey Canada program. But what they had done was they got off to such great starts to their season. They were dominant in their leagues. They were playing at a super high level, and they played their way onto the World Junior team. And that was the biggest thing. And it was an interesting process, just in the sense of like nobody knew who our goalies were going to be. It wasn't like in years past where, you know, everyone knew Michael DiPietro was going to be the guy. Carter Hart was going to be the guy for 2 straight years. Like there wasn't one particular guy where everyone was super comfortable with. So you kind of had to let the process play itself out. And those guys jumped to the forefront, and they saw an opportunity and jumped on it. And I mean, obviously it worked out. You know, those guys deserve to be where they were, and they deserve to get the opportunity that they got because they seized the opportunity that they had.
Yeah, I found this year's goaltending situation like probably the most interesting, like you said, and from past years, just because, you know, these guys sort of came out of nowhere, but also speaks to the fact that, you know, just because you're, you know, highly touted at some point, it doesn't mean that it's always going to be that way. And you know, obviously the hard work that those 2 guys put in got them the opportunity to play for their country. So now we go into the tournament, and we'll bypass the early stuff and get into you know, game 1 and the decision to start Nico Dawes. How did that come about?
Well, they, you know, both those guys. Well, and I'll throw Rodriguez too, because he was the 3rd guy, and Orod probably through the whole process. Well, through the whole process, he had the most international experience. He was probably penciled in to be the number 1 guy. You know, and those other 2 guys, not that he didn't play well, just those other 2 guys outplayed him. But to his credit, as the 3rd goalie, like he was a rock star. He was phenomenal. Like he was such a great teammate, and the way he handled that situation was very professional and very mature. Like he didn't pout. He came to work. He came to the rink every day with a smile on his face at the hotel. He was a positive and energetic, and did everything he possibly could to make those other 2 guys comfortable and feel, you know, and then make the rest of the team like be good. So, but the decision with Dawes, like both him and Hofer, like their practices were phenomenal. Like all the way through, there wasn't like a day or 2 days in a row where you're like these guys are struggling. Like both those guys were they were pushing each other. It was wide open to see who was going to be the starter for the first game. They both knew it. So every day, again, their process was locked in. Like they were dominant in practice, and they're facing the best shooters, in the country of their age, and they were dominant, And so it was a tough decision to make, just in the sense of both of them deserved the chance to be that guy. And the coaching staff just felt that Nico, was a little step ahead of Joel at the time, and gave him the opportunity. And we won that first game, and Nico at that point had only played 50 games in the OHL, so he didn't have a whole lot of experience. And he went in there and he played well. He gave us a chance to win. He made some big saves in the third period. I think if we don't win that game against the U.S., we're probably hard pressed to even get to the gold medal game, because it set us up in the sense of, we have a pretty good opportunity to finish first in our pool by beating the Americans. So it worked out really well, and that it was obviously a tough decision to make, but that was the decision that, when you make decisions like that, there's a lot of people involved in that process. And that was the decision that the coaching staff wanted to go.
Yeah, that was interesting. So you said that the game 1 win, a 6-4 win over US. You go up against the Russians in the next game, and it's a tough one. And Hofer ends up going into that game. So now after game 2, how hard of a decision was it to at that point then go back to Hofer for the rest of the tournament?
Well, you knew at some point, probably you were hoping that Dawes was going to be. You always hope there's one guy that's kind of the guy all the way through, and that the other guy's probably going to get one game, and it's usually the one game they're going to get is not that all the teams are weak, but you're probably going to play that guy against the weaker team, and that was the Germans. So we kind of knew that Joel was probably going to play that game no matter what. But we didn't know how it was going to sort of play itself out. And it was a tight game. Like, the Germans were a really good team. If you look at the draft right now, they've got 3 guys ranked in the top 35 players for the draft. Like, they've got a real skilled team. And they pushed us, and it was, I think, a 3-1 win. And Joel played really, really well. Like, he made saves at the right times, gave us a chance to win. It's not like he was peppered with a lot of shots, but there's just moments in games where the goalie needs to come up with a big stop, and he did that for us that day. And right from then, like, he had some confidence. Like, he was nervous going into that game. Like, he pulled me aside and was like, Barb's like, I'm really nervous. Like, I don't know what to do. And so you kind of walk him through that process. Like, we're at the hotel. I could just tell by looking at him, he kind of wanted me to come over and talk to him. And it was good. We had that relationship where he wasn't afraid to be vulnerable and mention that and say that and tell me he was nervous. Because sometimes as goalies, we get caught up in, we just put it all on ourselves, and we feel like we're the only ones out there, and it's all on us. And you kind of forget that there's 20 guys around you supporting you. There's coaching staff supporting you. There's people around you who are supporting you. And even though technically at times we are on an island by ourselves, it's important for us to remember that we're not sometimes, and because we can stress ourselves out and put a whole lot of pressure on ourselves. So it was good that he did that, and it calmed them down, just the conversation that we had. And obviously he got that opportunity and took the ball and ran with it. Yeah.
So I mean, he played the rest of the tournament. So we fast forward to the gold medal game. I mean, you're down 3-1. Basically midway through the third period. End up scoring 2 to tie up, and then Nikhil Thomas with the game breaker there with about 3:58 left. What are the emotions when that is all happening in a span of in real time 20-25 minutes?
It didn't really feel real, to be honest. Like, the Russians were probably the best team in the tournament. They had an older team. They were physical and dominant, and it was a good hockey game. It was back and forth. When we got down 3-1, you're kind of like, oh boy, we're going to be hard pressed to come back from this. But you know what? We scored right away. Like, after they scored that third goal, we scored right away. I think 30 seconds later, we scored to make it 3-2 with like 11 minutes to go. So now you're back in the game. And the guys didn't quit. And again, to Joel's credit, like, he didn't, sometimes even as a goal, you're down, you give up that third goal in a gold medal game. And, maybe in your head you think, okay, well, we might not win this. And, he dug in and made, again, big saves at the right times. They had a power play towards the end of the game. And his ability to step up in that moment, that situation, and trust his abilities and sort of be a calming influence for everybody back there. Cause, we were on our heels there in the last, 2.5 minutes there when they had that power play. And obviously we got lucky when that puck hit the TSN camera to not make it a 5-on-3. And obviously you need things to go your way and you need things to happen like that do bring out some luck. But it was quite the ride. Like the fact that we were able to come back and not only tie it, and then obviously just to take the lead and then to hang on at the end was pretty special.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, it was certainly an entertaining game from a viewer standpoint. So I can imagine the roller coaster emotions that you as a coach, because you're just as invested as any player. Lanny, do we have any closing questions here before we wrap things up with Barbs here?
Yeah. First, I don't think you flashed the medal yet, have you, Barbs?
No.
Is it?
You guys want to see it?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that'd be the highlight of the call. So go ahead. There, Barbs takes the camera.
So can you guys see it?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So like for us as goalies, what's the cool thing about this medal?
It's got the mask right on there.
It's got a goalie right on there.
Yeah.
So it's funny because the whole time I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's meant to be like the World Junior logo was a goalie.
Yeah.
So like the whole time I'm like, huh.
And about time we got that.
Yeah. It worked out all right.
Center stage.
Yeah.
Okay, Barbs, we got some quick hits here. Just scrolling up. So what advice would you give, maybe from a former pro and now Western Hockey League coach, international coach, for young goalies heading into this upcoming season, just especially with it's kind of unprecedented, right? Haven't had a season like this before, a summer like this before. So what advice would you give for these young goalies?
Well, it's hard in the sense of we don't know when the seasons are going to start, when we're going to be able to get back onto the ice, those sort of things. I think it's super important for guys, for all the kids now, because they're not on the ice, to go be an athlete. Go play with your friends, go play other sports, go ride your bike, go do things like that now, before you're able to get back on the ice, because that'll help you when you get on the ice. That'll help with your strength, that'll help with your balance, your coordination, all those sorts of things. Jumping on trampolines, like things like that, for kids, I think are great, and it translates to us. It translates to us as goalies because we have to be athletic. We have to be really good athletes. So sometimes we can get caught up in just always focusing on being on the ice and being goalies, but I think it's super important, again, just to do athletic things off the ice. And it's a good time now because we're not allowed to be on the ice. So do those sorts of things. Don't just get caught up in, as fun as video games and stuff are, guys, don't just play video games all day and sit on your iPads and do all that sort of stuff. Get out with your buddies and play street hockey and do those kinds of things that, Kevin and I did growing up. That's what helped us become good goalies was those sorts of things, getting outside and doing that sort of stuff. I think it's super important.
No, that's awesome. We got a question here. If you've ever worked with Carter Hart specifically.
I have not. No, I've never met Carter. Obviously, coming through the Hockey Canada program, he's got a pretty good resume through the program, and he's very obviously highly thought of, and he's carving out a pretty good career for himself. So he's certainly a guy that you would love to be around a little bit and kind of pick his brain for sure. Because you know what, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much we've gone through or what we've done. You're constantly, you can always learn and get better. Doesn't matter how old you are or who you are. You can always learn from other people.
Absolutely. What about your favorite goalie right now in the NHL, and why?
Oh boy. I mean, it's easy to say, like, Carey Price, or, obviously I love Pricer and that, but Vasilevsky for me, he's a monster, obviously, and he's a big athletic guy, and just how he plays, how patient he is. He's a guy that I really like. The transformation of Jacob Markstrom to me has been pretty impressive. I played against him actually a lot in the minors when he was young, and he was full of piss and vinegar, and he was all over the place, and he's really kind of calmed his game down. And one goalie, though, I think young guys should really kind of watch. We all get caught up in size, and I get caught up in size too, but UC Saros is a guy that young kids should probably kind of keep an eye on. And I think he's an unreal goalie. He's only 5'11", maybe 6 feet tall. There's not a lot of guys like that in the league, but he kind of gives hope to those guys who are a little bit smaller, who learn to play goalie the right way. Sometimes as a big guy, it's easier to play goalie, just in the sense that the pucks might hit you sometimes. But watch him. He's an unbelievable skater. He's really patient on his feet. He tracks the puck really well. He's a guy to kind of keep your eye on.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Swanee, I'll turn it back to you there.
Yeah, that's great, Barbs, and those two guys, like, that's even mentioning Markstrom there. That's a pretty good pick for a guy that's really sort of revolutionized his career, and now you're looking at a top guy. But really appreciate you taking the time to join us here, and being able to talk goaltending is always fun, and we can probably do it for hours, and I'm sure there's many more things we could have discussed. Yeah. But hopefully we're back in the rink, and the Hurricanes and the Hitmen are going in a battle, and we can say hi again and be watching some hockey. But really appreciate you taking the time out with the kids, and hopefully you and the family are doing well, and we can all get back on the ice soon.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Get outside, kids. Enjoy the summer, and be athletes, because it'll help you.
Thanks a lot, Barbs. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, goalies. Thanks for dropping in. We'll see you all again next week.